If you're learning pixel art like me, you can make a lot of mistakes that can cost you a whole lot of time. I know this because I've made a whole lot of mistakes and it cost me a whole lot of time. So I'm making this video to help you to not be me. You can be faster and more efficient. I've made a top 5 list of my top 5 things I've done that screwed things up and take too long. Let's do it. Hey guys, I'm Andrew Robinson of Robinson Pixels, and since this list is about saving you time, let's not waste time. Let's jump into mistake number 1, not learning your program. So I'm a learner by doing. I like to just dive into whatever I'm trying to figure out and hope I can intuitively kind of just get the hang of it. And I'll usually only look things up when I've got a question. But the thing is, you can only look stuff up if you know that you need to look it up. So here's a case study on me. For this game that my friends and I were making, at the time I wanted to make sure that the tiles were all 16 by 16 pixels. In order to do that, I actually drew out a 16 by 16 square and kind of built my own grid. Now the problem with doing this, you've got a 2 pixel thick line that's kind of in the way. You can try and draw under that and it's in the way. You can try and draw over that and lose track of where it is. It's not very effective. The app that I use, Pixaki, and also Sprite, they have a grid line feature. I have wasted so much time drawing lines to try and align stuff. I didn't have to do all that. That was a waste of time. So, maybe get in there and actually read about your program, in addition to figuring it out as you go. Mistake number 2, using a single layer. Now this is the most personal preference item on the list. Not everyone uses an app that has multiple layers, and even the ones who do don't always like using multiple layers because you can kind of get lost. But what I do is I use different layers as backups, right? It's like a checkpoint during the whole process. So if I want to try out a character's face looking one way versus another, I'll just duplicate the layer so that way I can try it both ways. I bug my wife with this all the time. She calls it like the eye doctor test because it's, is this one or this one? This one or this one? Back and forth over and over. Even if you're in an app that doesn't support multiple layers, you can still copy your character and paste them over here and still work on this version in this area. That way you can still eyeball which one looks better. Mistake number 3, inconsistent style. Now, I don't mean that every single artist has to have their own very specific dedicated style. That's a conversation for another day. What I mean is the style that you're using should be consistent within the rules that you have defined. So for example, in your piece or your game, whatever you're working on, if every character has an outline, well then they should all have an outline, right? If that outline is in color, they should all be in color. Now obviously there could be exceptions, but the exceptions should be intentional. Like in Mega Man X, every character has a black outline, except for Dr. Light. But he's a hologram, so it wouldn't make any sense for him to have that black outline. He would look solid. Also, for Mega Man X himself, when he's charging up his X-Buster, he glows with a different colored outline, but that's intentional to give him that extra look of power. Both of those decisions were on purpose. It would be weird if every single character had a black outline except for Chill Penguin. What would that be about? And the same goes for an environment, just be consistent with it. So if your light source is coming from the top right, then the light source is coming from the top right on all of your trees and your space rocks and your cabin. It should all be the same. Mistake number 4, poor background color choices. So colors have a huge impact on each other, right? Specifically, a background color will impact the way that the color in the foreground looks. So for example, we've got 2 boxes with green squares inside them. The square on the left is brighter than the one on the right? Even in grayscale, that's how it looks, except it turns out they're the same square. This is due to a little known fact called science. I don't really know how it works or why, but it's what happens. So if you're working on a standalone piece and you know what the background color is going to be, or at least a general idea, sure, go ahead and set that background color towards that general idea and start working with your colors. But if you're not sure, or if your character is going to be in multiple places, it's usually best to go ahead and just use like a medium gray, because that will work with light colors and dark colors and it'll generally look right. But even in those cases, you still need to experiment with the background color as you're working through your piece. So for example, if you have gray on your character, you might not notice, oh, well, I missed a spot, and then you've just got a big hole in the character. That's no good. The other thing that can happen too is like you get it done, you're really proud of it, and then you're editing your YouTube video together and you realize that you can't put a black background behind your character because then they lose their feet. Haha, oops. If I had tested that beforehand, I might have used a different color for the boot. Mistake number 5, overcommitting. So where I normally go too hard is in character design. I might do characters with a whole lot of different colors to shade, but the thing is, how complex your characters are determines how complex your background will be. The background is going to be as complex or more than your character, usually not less. So I usually use cartoons for my example when I'm thinking about this. In a cartoon, typically the characters will be either solid flat colors, or they might have one shade along with it. And then the background is either gonna kind of match that character style, or it'll be a full-blown painting. So you can have simple characters in a simple world, or simple characters in a detailed world, or detailed characters in a detailed world. But what doesn't usually work is detailed characters in a simple world. And even aside from like the volume of colors, there are other considerations to take into account. The higher the detail on the sprites, the more frames you'll probably need for your animation. You'll also probably need more realistic movements and a better understanding of how anatomy actually works. Now, I'm not trying to talk you out of making any dream project. It's actually the exact opposite. I'm trying to help you create your dream project. It's just really easy to bite off more than you can chew, and then you might end up giving up on that project, like I've done. But I also just want to add, don't beat yourself up for not finishing projects and stuff like that. I want you to be proud of what you finished and of what you didn't finish. Even by doing anything on a project, you've done more than 99% of people. So you should be proud of that and use that knowledge that you learned going forward into whatever else you're gonna do in the future. You got this. If you want to see me make a whole lot of mistakes during a whole project that are not any that I've listed here, check out my Godzilla x Kong video and follow along for more pixel practice. I don't watch a lot of tutorials, I don't read a lot of videos. I don't watch a lot of tutorials or read a lot of shit.